Yes. Welcome. Welcome to another session, another stream, another slash podcast video, where you want to call it, here on the Chaos Rain Show. I am Chaos Rain here. I'd like to welcome everybody that will be viewing this and live, and also going back into the so-called replay of things. Make sure to like the stream, share the stream, and if you're not subscribed to the Chaos Radio Show, what you waiting for? Hit that red button, hit that top notification bell for the uploads and live streams here on the Chaos Radio Show. Also, please follow me on Twitter at ChaosRain7. Add me as a friend on Facebook, Eric Rain on Facebook. Join the Discord service of the Chaos Rain Show. And one thing I also forget, please subscribe or follow me on Rumble as well. Now, as we look, do we have the links for that? Yes, the links are in the description of this particular broadcast. And, I also put it in the chat room as well. So there's countless ways to follow Chaos Rain Show. So as I'm looking right now, and I'm looking very good at this. Let's look. Where is it? Let me do this. And one moment. There we go. So that now it's in the description of this stream. And I'm trying to look, see if I forgot anything. Let me see if I'm missing something. Yeah, I do. I think I might be missing something right here. 1 second, guys. Let me put this here, because I'm just doing some little housekeeping. So don't bear with me for a second as I'm trying to do some things. We'll go soon start the show in a second. Okay. So now I got a lot of things pulled up here. So let me see if that copy. All right. Okay, good. All right. There we go. I don't know why the thumbnail's not showing. That's weird. I don't know what's going on, guys. I gotta double check, see everything's good. Because for some reason it's not showing the thumbnail for this stream. Can y'all hear me good? How you doing, Mr. Mojo Magnificent? I'm not sure, you guys. Can you see the thumbnail of today's stream, Mr. Mojad? Tell me in the chat room if you can, because I've noticed there is no there's no thumbnail for this. I don't know what's going on here. Let me double check one more time. If not, we're just going to start. Wait, hold on. I see you wrote some. Oh, you see? Okay. So I'm not going to hold up the time. And I'm going to have a lot of screens open because I got to go back and forth and look what's going on here. Well, it looks like from the presence, it looks like you see my thumbnail. So that's a good sign. So now, what else if I forgot? Oh, matter of fact, I'll give you the links now. Please follow me on Rumble. Let me drop the Rumble link into the chat room. I would like to start growing, following, and Rumble. And as you know, Super Chat is now available for those that want to contribute. So please don't be hesitant. Throw some dollar bills, throw some coins, whatever on here. Let it light up, And please make sure you share this stream and hit the like button. It is very important because this is some. Oh, damn it! Hold on. Because this is something that we had to have the conversation. All right, so let me do this again. Let me clear some things. Okay. Here's the Rumble link for those to follow me on Rumble, please. And I'll periodically look in the chat room for those that's coming and watching from the clouds. Please hit the like stream and sit back and enjoy. Watch for a few minutes and here and there, and you can always cuss me out at the end of this video, depending on how you feel. So I think that's all the information. I'm not sure if I forgot anything. Hopefully I did not. No, I did not forget anything. So it looks like we're a go. Oh, somebody wrote a very good question. Why do women have to choose between her career and her man? That's a good question. I can't answer it because that's on social media, and I don't want to go into that. Maybe sometime something that has to be examined. Anywho, let's begin. Hey, y'all guys, how's my volume? Is my volume good? Because I'm going to be using different outlets. I see more people watching, so please like the stream and share the stream. Likes and shares are free, last time I checked. So now, the topic at hand. The untold truth of the dating divide. Now, why I call this the untold truth of dating divide? Let's be clear and let's be honest here. A lot of people today, and I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to get pushback. How I look at the dating scene today, which I have some participate as well, not much, but it is what it is, that how we look at dating now in the 21st century is more of a get together and a hookup where it's just instant gratification, an instant release, most likely an orgasmic release. And that's how I see dating now in the present day. So now when we hear about people divesting or people that swirling from the men's side that wants to swirl and get non-black mates, to now you're hearing from amongst the black community, black women, dating or swirling as well. The untold truth that's not being discussed is, does every other race of people are thrilled or eager or really looking and checking black people in regards to finding mates and having not only the children, but also building long-term relationships that will lead to marriage? Other groups of people, meaning other race of people, from non-whites to non-black men. So we're going to watch a video. We're going to go point. We're going to do some analysis. We're going to do some takes, some reactions. And we'll let the two, I believe, women that wrote this book called The Dating Divide, that's been released back in 2021, I think of February. Salute. I see Mike. What's good, brother? What's good? And like always, please share the stream, guys. Throw in some coins to super chat. I'm hoping that I'll get a super chat here and there, but who knows? We'll see. Anyway, let us proceed. And I hope y'all, sit back and enjoy. And if everything goes well, if y'all want me to open up and give y'all own testimony or your own views on it, I'm willing to hear from y'all. Always, if you want me to open the stream, leave a leave a comment in the chat room. So let's begin, guys. And like always, let me put my banners up. I can't forget that. Yes, we got to go fair use with this one. We have to go fair use. You see? Let's get it.
Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome to the Ticket Show. I'm Conchetta Rose. Jennifer H. Lundquist is Professor of Sociology and Senior Associate Dean of Research and Faculty Development with the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She received...
Now, mind you, as you can see the the picture of the book, this is the book. And this was a study done for like, I would say since the dating apps started to come around in the last almost 20 years. I think dating apps came around in 2002, 2003. I had to Google see when was the first dating app. Matter of fact, I'll do one better. Before we continue, and make sure you guys hit the like button, I'm going to look up something through the AI to find when was the first dating app. First. On the net. Let's see what information I get. Okay, this is what I found out. The first dating app that ever appeared on the internet was a dating app called Match.com, which was launched in 1995. Match.com is often credited as the first online dating platform where users could create a profile and browse through potential matches. It paved the way for development of numerous other dating apps and websites that follow. Got it? So let me go back. That was the first dating app, roughly 28 years ago. 28 years. And mind you, the internet was just starting to get circulating, meaning as you know, as the 80s ended, we go into the 90s, the internet was around, but it was very slow because we didn't have high speed, really fast internet. I think we were running on 3G, or actually 2 to 3 or 1G at the time back in the 90s. So at the time when people were still getting comfortable with using the computer and using the internet, sites like Match.com were the first websites that started to, take advantage of online activities in regards to people finding suitable mates. So let's keep going. Fair use, fair use. And please, guys, like the stream and share the stream. Likes and shares are free. Let's continue. Fair use.
A joint PhD in demography and sociology from the University of Pennsylvania in 2004. Her research has been funded by the National Science Foundation, Mellon and Humboldt, and covered by outlets ranging from Time, Newsweek, The Washington Post, The New York Times, and National Public Radio. Her recent work includes her book with Celeste Carrington and Ken-Hu Lin, The Dating Divide: Race and Desire in the Era of Online Romance. Today on The Etiquette Show, we have with us Jennifer Lundquist. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Absolutely. All right, so let's just get right into it. So tell us a little bit about your backstory. Where did you start out? How did you get to be where you are today?
With the book or just generally in my career?
Generally in your career.
Oh, okay.
So I would take it Jennifer Lundquist was the one that wrote this book. And, she is a PhD. Let's keep in mind. So she's well studied, well versed, and did, I guess, thorough research in the matter of how people operate throughout the digital space of online dating. Let's keep in mind that, as you know, how online dating is used and how it's been abused for the last maybe 20 years or so, that when it comes to the racial background, majority of people, when they go on these dating sites, they're not really intended to really, on the average, depending on the background, and I could be wrong, looking to find and marry mates. Or I think most of them are out there looking for some potential love. Or more likely get a release. Nonetheless, these people that go online to search for people is always one ulterior motive, and that usually is overall sex on the average. But let's keep going. Fair use, fair use.
Well, I've always been very interested in why people do the things they do and how it is that society plays a role in influencing the way people do things. And so social science has always been very interesting to me. I was a social science major in college. And then, gosh, my first job out of college was actually as an unpaid intern at the Smithsonian Institution, where it turned into a contract research position eventually. And it was on the history of exercise machines and how we were putting an exhibit together. But I got to do all the research in the patent office about the inventions of the exercise machines. And we were making an argument that the Industrial Revolution was also influencing people to think about their bodies as an extension of a machine, and how could they improve their bodies with these exercise machines. And so that kind of lit me up to, wow, you can actually have a career asking interesting questions and writing interesting things about the data that you find. So that drew me into eventually graduate school. And I got a joint PhD in demography and sociology. I actually studied the military, interestingly enough. I was very interested in the social dynamics of the military. People don't often think of the military as one big socialist community, but in fact it is. And it's a really interesting way to look at some of the dynamics that we grapple with in civilian society in kind of this controlled environment. So I did a lot of research around that. That was my dissertation. But I've always been very interested in race and racial inequality. So much of my work has been infused by thinking about race relations and racial hierarchies in the United States. And of course, that's a large part of what this book is about, that I wrote with Celeste and Ken, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, but who have been really great co-authors and a lot of fun to do the research with.
So we're going to stop there. So it seemed to me that her focus really is on the racial aspects of people and how race is conducted in America. Now, how many y'all want to bet that, if Jennifer is in an interracial relationship, marriage, or interracial relationships? I want to give or take. You think she's in one? Oh, I forgot. Wrote this. All right. Hold on. Okay. I wonder how what's y'all thoughts about that, people? I think she could be. I mean, I doubt it, but usually when you find non-Black people are focusing on race, particularly in regards what people do behind the bedroom, or who they're really having, entanglements, you always gotta look at as a side eye that what was the purpose you looking into their backgrounds, of who they're messing around with, I mean, is the person white, Black, etc.? What led you? What really drawn you in, besides understand the military aspect and how military structure in regards to how they conduct foreign affairs, business, and even, let's say, even go as far as marriage, or I'm actually sorry, relationships? Because if you think about it, if you're a military person, depending on what branch of military, they always advocate, and I'm not sure they still push today, that as a man or woman, it's always better you partner up, pair off in a union, in a marriage, for not only get benefits, but really to show that you have some sense of structure, that you have something to lean onto and someone to look over to, like some form of responsibility. And really, truly, it gives you a person, man, woman, to really have some to fight for, in my opinion, why they push marriage, if they still push marriage. Because if you're fighting for somebody, you're going to put more energy and effort into the military, because you have a duty to you have a duty to uphold. And usually in unions, you're going to work hard because you have someone to defend, you have someone to look over to. That's my belief why they push, if they still push marriage in the military. They're not like the normal civilians that sit there just want to get a release. But anywho, let's keep going. Fair use, fair use.
So when did you sort of know that this was going to be your path? Was it in grad school or before grad school, I should say, when you decided to study this, or did you feel like in your heart, you know, I get inside and want to know why these things happen?
I would say it was probably, you know, when you're in college, it's not always clear how, say, my anthropology major or my sociology major is going to translate into a direct job. And so having that first job at the Smithsonian Institute really helped me see the ways in which it could be applied to the real world. And so, you know, one of the things I do as a professor is I very much make it clear to my students, as we're learning maybe very theoretical things, the ways in which they can actually take that into critical thinking and apply it into a job, or, you know, thinking from that very structural perspective rather than only an individual perspective about why things work the way they do. I try to make it very clear how they can translate that into many types of jobs that they can get out. So I would, as a result of my Smithsonian Institute experience, I think that's really where it gelled for me. And then when I went to graduate school, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go into academia or if I wanted to work in applied research. A lot of demographers work in think tanks or work for censuses and that sort of thing. But I love teaching as well. So for me, being able to teach and being able to do research is really, it's the best of both worlds.
That's awesome. So our friend.
Yeah. She like most college people today, even back then and now, they go into the universities still trying to find themselves, to find the identity of what they really want to do. And she is not alone. There are countless students, not only from Black, white, etc. Some of them really don't know what they really want to do with their lives once they decide to go to college. They just go in there just to, you know, figure it out. And today, how I look at things, figure things out, that is a formula for disaster. And here's why. Because as y'all know, the natural debt of student loan debt is, last time I checked, roughly over almost two trillion now, or over 2 trillion. I'll probably double check that in a second. But really truly, if you're going just to school just to figure it out, you are already behind the 8 ball. And I say this not to insult people, but you got to have a sense of direction why you're there. And I think a lot of people don't really have a clear idea why they're there. You know, and personally, if you didn't get a free ride to college, you don't really have time to waste, especially if you're not getting if you had to pay out your own pocket or take loans just to get a education. Personally, I think most people should have a sense of direction why they're going to college, and they should know that, right? I would say as that almost the last 3 years after sophomore year, you should really have a clear idea of what you really want to do, and then find ways to how to go about it properly if you have to go the college route. And usually if you can't figure it out, the best thing any person could do, and let me make myself bigger, is it's better that a lot of men and women go straight to the military. Now, as you know, how can I say this? If y'all familiar with the Great Fulton Initiative, it talks about entering these institutions that have power. Military is one, and I think EMTs and fire department are second. And the reason why it was referenced in that booklet is to give you the best outcomes. Live now. So that way you have a foundation, and let's be honest, you get paid while you learn, you know, instead of sit there taking a whole lot of debt. Thanks. Personally. So anywho, let me see. I was checking some things. What's going on here? Yeah, it's a distraction. I don't know what this dude's doing. Anyway, let's keep going, guys. Fair use, fair use.
And friends, don't worry. I had to look it up too. I didn't know what demography was. Can you better explain what that means? What is sociology? What is demography?
Yeah, so it's funny that you say that because my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time when I went in my PhD, he always referred to it as demonology because he'd never heard of demography and he thought that sounded much more interesting. And perhaps it is. So sociology is the study of society. And people study it. There's a quantitative component to it, a qualitative component to it, and many different ways of knowing. And demography is really focused on 3 areas of society. Demography focuses on fertility, it focuses on migration, and it focuses on mortality. Basically, it's population studies. And most demographers tend to be very quantitative, using mathematical, probabilistic forecasting to be able to predict what populations will look like based on fertility, mortality, migration patterns. But there's also lots of really interesting theoretical insight within all of this, right? So you might be interested in a mathematical forecasting of fertility, but within that is, okay, why is it that fertility is declining? What is it about gender relations that may be influencing people one way or the other? What is it about the lack of supports, say for childcare, that may be influencing fertility? So demography is sort of the mathematical shell of population studies, but it's rich with all kinds of social science insight.
Oh, to let you know, this is going to be a lot of things, a lot of words, a lot of big words on today's stream as you're witnessing it. So you got to stick by it, listen carefully of detail, follow this through like always. As you know, this is me seeing this for the first time. So it's not something that I watch right and then give to y'all. I watch in front of y'all, giving actual commentary from my perspective, how I see things, So don't mind me. So let's continue. Fair use, fair use.
So you kind of need both, a hand in both to get the full analysis, so to speak, right?
Well, a sociologist would not agree with that, and perhaps a demographer would not agree with that, but since I happen to have both degrees, I would say yes, definitely.
Okay, so when did your focus shift to online dating? Was it when online dating sort of became popular, or was it a little bit later you realized that there was a connection, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so actually, if I had to trace it back, I can remember exactly when it happened. So one of the co-authors on the book, Ken, was in one of the classes I was teaching. It was a class on race and immigration. And we were studying racial segregation in the United States. And the fact.
And racial segregation in the United States has been around for a couple centuries, man. I think after, like always, after the physical enslavement ended, they create many laws because, let's be honest, they don't want blacks and whites to be fully integrated like that. Because as you know, if you're a black person in America, you are a lesser than, you're what they consider 3/5 of a human. And those laws still exist today, the 3/5 clause. A lot of people are not aware of. Those still exist. So your presence in regards to how they deal with you after they can't control you is one of the above. They will lock you up, or I know but they'll do that, or they will sit there and do other things to put you in a much more uncomfortable circumstance, which we're not going to get into. Anywho, let's continue. Fair use, fair use.
The fact that racial segregation has moved hardly at all in 30, 40 years since the civil rights era, really. We still have very high rates of racial segregation throughout society, not just neighborhoods, but schools, workplace, etc. And he came into my office one day and said, wouldn't it be fascinating if we could get a perspective on how this very desegregated space of online, especially online dating, how is it then that people interact? Because from a demographer's perspective, part of the reason, the quandary is interracial marriage, interracial relationships are very uncommon. Given if you were to like randomly sort people together across the United States, interracial marriage rates should be much, much, much higher than what they actually are. So they're very low.
No, and it's never gonna be high. That's why when I hear people talk about, say, from the male side, it's higher. And the reason why it's so higher because let's be honest. Other groups of women want and need men. Rather, a lot of ladies in our community don't want to hear that. They're not too picky last night check. And I don't advocate the swirling, but since we talk about it, they don't have no problem dealing with a man on a certain level. Let's keep it real. If a man is what they need, because they know a man is essential, is needed for their natural necessity and possibly maybe their natural survival. Other groups of women know this. It's just the difference between these group of women and, let's say, our women here, mostly black women here, is it's not really a necessity because there's always someone that's going to fit the bill and provide something. And, you hear this notion that, a good portion of black male populations don't want to provide nothing at all. And that's what the word is on the street that's going on for a whole lot of them. And I say there are some men that's going to provide, but not every man is the same. So we got to get that clear. So in regards to why it's so low or it should be high, and the answer is simple because not everybody's playing ball in regards to marrying, dating, and marrying out. Meaning that other groups of people, especially the non-black men, are sitting to say, and they're eager to say, God, I woke up this morning, I need to go find me a nice, non-white mate. Mostly a black or brown woman. No, they don't think like that. Men are, they seek and want not only what's in their group, but they'll dabble when necessary. How you doing, Faith? How you doing? As y'all know, please like the stream if y'all want to be so kind. The super chats there, it works. Everything works now. So please support the stream if you can, And really, truly, I always say that it might get higher. And it possibly will in time. But by the time, if it does start to increase on the other side in regards to the women and non-black men, that's still a long way to go. I would say more or talk more about this, but let me keep running this tape. Fair use. And like always, if you guys want me to drop the call line to really give y'all insight or take on this particular video, please leave let me know in the comment section or in the chat room. Fair use.
And so the question for social scientists is always, is this because people have racial antipathy or preferences for only someone of their same race or don't want to be with others? We have a long history of that in the United States in terms of, our whole book is basically about the history of that. Or is it about exposure, that we live in such a racially segregated society that people simply don't have the opportunity to form friendships that may blossom into relationships, or they're not going to the same church. We have all of these institutions that are very segregated in the United States, and that's changing to a certain extent, but it's still incredibly resistant to change. So that was what we found really compelling. Okay, it would be great if we could actually get a hold of this data and be able to see not just what people say they, how racially progressive they might be, but what do they actually do when no one else is looking? What do they do in this online space? And so that's really how the whole project started. I mean, I would say that, a driving force is that, and then also just that from about 2010 forward, for the first time, and a lot of this has to do with the advent of the smartphone and dating apps becoming so accepted.
Now, she said that the smartphone and, dating apps, and I think one of the smartphones that really changed the game, and anybody in the chat room could confirm this, was the iPhone. iPhone came around in 2007. Now, mind you, we had smartphones during the end of the 90s, actually roughly 1999, I believe. I think the first smartphone, let me do some digging right now as I continue to videotape. Please make sure you like the stream and share the stream. smartphone. Hold on. All right, let's see what I get. Okay, I got some here. All right, the very first smartphone that was ever released. And I want you to follow the correlation between the first online dating to the first smartphone. The first smartphone that was sold, I think particularly in America or outside the Western region, or the whole world. The very first smartphone, as was understood by today, was the IBM Simon Personal Communication, introduced in 1994. It was a combination of a mobile phone and a personal digital assistant, PDA. Featured a touchscreen display and the ability to send and receive email, fax, and page. The IBM Simon is considered the first device to be labeled as a smartphone due to its advanced features beyond just phone calls. Although the term smartphone itself wasn't widely used at that time, it laid the groundwork for the development of modern smartphones that follow in the coming years. So, to recap, I had to double down. It was not the iPhone. This Samsung, or the Simon personal computer from IBM, was the very first smartphone that came out 29. Sorry about it. Was the actual first touchscreen smartphone from what is read here. So this is why it's always good to do background on a lot of the technology we like to consume, because this is something that I did not know of. Because I always believed that it was always the iPhone was the very first actual touchscreen smartphone. But through simple search, it's giving me a different information. So there's that. So since 1994 to the first dating app in 95, it's starting to make a lot of sense. Dating apps will not exist without the advent of a smartphone. So keep that in mind. So let's continue, guys. Fair use, fair use.
As a way to meet people. Meeting someone online became the primary way that couples were forming. So prior to that, it was much more about one's peers, meeting people in school, meeting out at bars, etc. And I think it was around 2013, actually, when it became the primary way, the most common way that couples would meet. And so from our perspective, this is a major new innovation in the evolution of courtship.
So for the last decade, did y'all get that? Let me see if I can rewind that back. Hold on. Let me see if I can rewind that back for you. I have to rewind that back. Let me see. Where am I? Okay. Let's hear that again.
This is a major new innovation in the evolution of courtship in late capitalism, right? So for
okay, wait, I'm sorry. Let me rewind it back. Sorry, guys.
When it became the primary way, the most common way that couples would meet. And so from
all right, that's not it. Let me find the actual timestamp. Here we go. I found it. So let's hear that again. What year was it when it was the primary application for people to meet each other? It said 2013. Let's hear it from her mouth again and reason why.
So prior to that, it was much more about one's peers, meeting people in school, meeting out at bars, etc. And I think it was around 2013, actually, when it became the primary way, the most common way that couples would meet. And so from our perspective, this is a major new innovation in the evolution of courtship in late capitalism, right? So for centuries, the process of courtship, dating, marriage has been overseen and regulated by the state and the family and the church, all of whom historically and sociologically have a vested interest, in the distribution of wealth and property, which is why they wanted to control how this worked. And so to us, I can keep. Do you want me to end there, or do you want me to keep going? Because I could go on.
Before you keep going, she talks about courtship and stuff, and like I said, and if we do real data in regards to how successful are these dating apps now, we'll get mixed numbers. I think this particular book probably got the information about potentially the success rate of dating people out online, and it says of if these online datings lead to actual marriage, roughly over, let's say, if it reaches over 65%. Now I would say 50% is half, and that is somewhat the baseline. But usually, you have something that's really successful and something that is the way to go. When you see people using the app and has successfully found their match and is happy, and it's roughly over or approaching 7%. As you know, 7% is, like in most school systems, is a passing grade. But finding people and courting people with this type of method, it is an old form of courtship. Hold on, and or it's what they call a new form of courtship, but really, truly, it's not really courting, because if you meet someone online, you're not really finding no one online that is really to your liking, where you could sit there as a man, especially command choose marriage, saying this is I find my mates through online dating. That's not possible. But anyway, let's keep going. Fair use.
On and on.
Please, going.
So the concept of dating, the way we think of dating today, that really emerged in the early 20th century, and actually it was very controversial when it first started. And what I mean by this is, unchaperoned outings that often involve some degree of consumption. And this really began first among urban youth in the cities who were away from their families or had some degree of wages working in the factories, and could take on more autonomy. And part of the reason it was so controversial is because, the family wasn't as involved in these outings, right? And there was also this assumption or suspicion that dating was very similar to prostitution, and that there were, gifts being exchanged in exchange for, dinner for sexual favors, that kind of thing. It wasn't really until the 50s that it became this kind of wholesome idea of dating, the way we think of it. So it's a really interesting history in itself. But yeah, dating was a result of industrialization and economic transformation, and all the changes in the role of women's work and the family and the individual that came with it. And so young people for the first time had independence and who they wanted, who they could be with.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned about industrialization. Can we say, for those that's listening, that is it really industrialization that caused the real collapse of family structure? Can we really be honest and conclude that that is one of the stages of when family cohesive family structure, or even maintain family or family building, was really demolished once industrialization start to really reach an apex? Can we really be honest and have this conversation? I think it played a role in a lot of, not only family functions, but also the demise of certain family functions, to be honest with you. Because to have the what do you call it, industrialization, you got to be put into environments / cities that have the most industrialization, last time I checked. But let's be honest. we don't really do research or really look at the history of why industrialization exists and why is it now at a point where we're transitioning from industrialization to tech industries, where technology does more of our work and the need for actual physical labor or people is no longer a necessity. So that's something to really ponder and think about. I don't know about y'all, but that's something to really examine. Anyway, let's continue. Fair use, fair use.
And so that is when the shift in who influences you in your sexual or partner choices shifted from more of previously the family, the church, a state, more to your school, your institutions like school, your peers, friends, etc. And here's kind of where we get into the book. So dating at the very beginning of the 20th century, around, well, I would say 1910s, 1920s, this emerged during a social climate of post-slavery, where there is...
Now, mind you, the industrialization started to really, I would say, be at almost the height. And I mean almost the height. Because industrialization, as we know it, happened in Europe first during the end of the 1700s. Then here in America, we go for our stage of industrialization during the mid 1800s. So now what she's going to really go into, from what I'm getting at, is she's going to be talking about, this thing about, I think segregation. Let me see what she said. Let me rewind back and let's listen more. Fair use, fair use.
This emerged during a social climate of post-slavery, where there was intense fear and anxiety on the part of white Americans who feared that racial mixing in a post-slavery United States threatened the social and economic status quo. And along with this, and much of this is causally related to the end of slavery, eugenics science, that is the scientific explanations of racial inferiority, superiority, that was becoming mainstream and very widely embraced by scientists and academics. So as a result of kind of dating happening, becoming a thing, and this fear around racial mixing, we had the proliferation of anti-miscegenation laws, which were intensively enforced from about the 1900s through the 1940s. And basically what the anti-miscegenation laws were legally regulating who could have sexual relations and who could marry whom, all related to race. It was a felony, essentially. And the primary focus in most states was keeping white Americans from Black Americans. But in many states, this also extended over time to police whites from mixing with Asians, Latinos, et cetera. And so it really varied state by state. And, anti-miscegenation law was really the core mantle of Jim Crow policy in the United States. I mean, there were lots of other ways in which racial hierarchy was enforced, but anti-miscegenation law.
Make sure you guys hit the like, share, and please subscribe to the channel. I'm right now come with a poll right now. Let me see what poll should this subject on this subject. All right. Let's see if the poll's working. There's a poll. We're going, from what y'all give out, I will put the call link. I'm gonna rewind this back because I've missed some things to give some clarity. So let's go back a little bit. Yeah, that's good enough. Let's go back again. We're gonna rewind a few bits. Fair use, fair use.
Essentially. And the primary focus in most states was keeping white Americans from Black Americans. But in many states, this also extended over time to police whites from mixing with Asians, Latinos, et cetera. And so it really varied state by state. Anti-miscegenation law was really the core mantle of Jim Crow policy in the United States. I mean, there were lots of other ways in which racial hierarchy was enforced, but anti-miscegenation law was a primary.
Actually, I will have to disagree with that. Miscegenation laws were around during the inception and the creation of what we call the United States of America. If you remember, slaves could not marry the master, but the master could have access to you engage in intercourse with you, and God Almighty might produce children on you. But you see, he could not marry the slave. Let's be clear. So when she's referenced, this is after during Jim Crow. That's error. That's false. This has been going on since the 1600s. Jim Crow did not really come around until after the mid 1800s. And there are stories of slaves that were either byproduct of miscegenation through force that want to marry into their slave master's class. So I'm only just saying this to give more context, to really give a real actual rebuttal. Now, some people are going to fight me on that, but I stand firm with what I just said because I'm pretty much clear about the history enough. And I don't remember or recall anything about during Jim Crow. Now they put laws in place so that no person could engage in miscegenation. No, those have been around a long time. Long time. But anyway, we're going to keep playing. Fair use, fair use.
One. And, anti-miscegenation law wasn't only in the South, it was throughout the West and some parts of the Northeast, et cetera. And in being able to legally enforce anti-miscegenation law, this sort of ambiguous concept of race became much more quantified and really socially constructed, but with the scientific venue. So we argue in the book that the invention of dating and the invention of race as we know it today happened together. And so we argue that the modern notions of romance are, deeply imprinted with this history in the United States, even if we are completely not aware of it. So even though anti-miscegenation law was struck down in the late 1960s, along with other Jim Crow era laws, although I will say some states didn't even remove their anti-miscegenation policy from their books until as late as 2000.
And there's good reasons why, because when laws put in place, it does not always go nationally, and every other state has to abide by it. It takes time for every state to really start to come up with countermeasures to adapt to the so-called present bills and laws that's placed in America, especially. If you remember, there were certain things dealing with enslavement lasted in certain states throughout this country up until present day. I think when the 13th Amendment was put in act, slavery and all that stuff, most states were not down to really follow and abide by the 13th Amendment. I think Mississippi was the last in the union that now was going to follow the 13th Amendment. And we all know how it is in Mississippi. Let me shout someone in the chat room. What's good? The Great Pill Podcast. How you doing, sir? So really, truly, no, a lot of these states are not going to abide by the laws of the land. Personally. And let you know that the states are pretty much really in control of the destiny of people that are living in these states, especially if you're a non-white person. Let's keep going. Fair use, fair use.
And a significant minority, close to 40% in some of these states, voted against the removal. So, there is residue, even though this seems so antiquated, right? And, as a result, this lives on in the United States. So maybe not legally anymore, but structurally in terms of where we live, where we go to school, what kinds of opportunity structures we have, who goes to prison, who doesn't, what our health outcomes are even, and there's huge racial divisions, disparities in health outcomes, life expectancy. We've seen this with COVID as well. And of course that infuses our belief systems and social hierarchies. So when the dating market then by the 21st century, about a decade into it, began to move online and became the primary place. And now after the COVID pandemic is probably more entrenched than ever as the primary way to meet people. Here we see a very tantalizing, from an academic perspective, step away from third-party oversight, with the internet now the primary way that couples meet, and less influenced by third parties than ever before. And most of our third-party influences, were family, friends, schools, all of which tended to be racially segregated. So,
and that's by design. Let's be clear. Segregation is predominantly done and structured by white people in America. They want and push and still uphold even policies to keep every racial people divided. Because you got to understand, this is teamed with white preservation, or the likeness of preserving whites. That's why it was created. I hear a lot of Negroes tell us say that we shouldn't have segregation. It destroy us as people. You got to understand, if you have a business and you run a business, your attention of a business, if you're smart, understand how business work, is to galvanize and attract customers of all walks of life. Not just one demographic of customers, but every racial customer. If you're only focused on your consumer base on a particular racial demographics, you will not be in business long. Case in point, people understand during your segregation, you might have some sustainable business here and there, but really is not something that could put you in a better position in a corporate sense, or catapult you to being like a Fortune 500 or 600 or whatever company. Because where you get your dollars, your money that puts in your business is only on one racial group. Unlike other groups of people, they get their money from all racial groups, including black folks. That's something that y'all should really put some food for thought in. Anyway, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Fair use, fair use.
The interesting question is, from an intellectual perspective, what are the implications of a desegregated sexual marketplace for the erotic life of race? So that's the backdrop of the question that we went into, because online dating in theory has no segregation. So we were really curious, how might daters perpetuate or reproduce it or resist it? Can it be a disruption of the racial order? So here's what we did for the book. But do you have any questions before I continue?
Billy, the first one that comes to mind is, it seems to me, in my very simple, that every time something comes out in history, it's considered taboo. And it's mostly because it's new, right?
Right.
We're doing this for the first time. Ooh, that must be bad, or it must be like dangerous in some way.
Yeah.
And you've just described is a history of that, and a history of proving that theory very wrong.
Right, exactly.
It blows my mind, because of our society today, and we know the troubles that we have. And I think of online dating, and I go, "There's no trouble there. That's fun stuff. That's people trying to network and meet each other, and
right,
and find friendship and find companionship,
right,
related to this." But
no, man, we don't go online dating just to find friendship and companionship. If you're a woman and that's what you're finding and that's what you're seeking, I would say you better going outside and go meeting people in real life. Dating apps are not designed to find somebody and to have conversations. Hell, people do that on Facebook and IG and other social media apps all day, every day. If you're there to look for that, your attention and your focus is on the wrong spots. If you look for mating and friendship and all that stuff, you need to go outside. All these so-called gurus and stuff tell men many times you gotta get out in the world. Interact, be sociable. I know the computers, the technology makes you more antisocial, and make you more awkward. And this not only applies to men, but also applies to you ladies too, because a lot of y'all ladies be on your phones, on the computer the same way, and y'all becoming awkward as well. One thing, the giveaway and the danger of technology today, it creates a stagnant drone that needs input, needs something to do. And because of that, there is consequence of becoming drone-like in the real world. All right, let's keep going. Fair use, fair use.
But you're proving me very wrong in that theory. And my goodness, it's really taken me aback a little bit to think of that.
Yeah. Well, sociologists have a way of taking all the fun out of things. I will say that.
Well, no, but we need guys. We need you to tell us, hey, we've done this before and we messed it up last time. Let's try it. Let's not repeat history. And I think we lose that somehow in our society. And I don't know if it's a new wave of thinking that tells us we don't need to know what happened before. I'm just in the present moment, focus on this now. But there's so much to be gained from the mistakes that have already been made, or things we don't agree with that we, maybe don't even know we didn't agree with. No, so let's focus on the book for a second. The Dating Divide, Race and Desire in the Era of Online Romance. The Dating Divide is the first comprehensive look at digital sexual racism, a distinct form of racism that is mediated and amplified through impersonal and anonymous context of online dating. So I know you have begun already, but can you break that down a little bit for our viewers?
Yes. Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about how we came to know what we knew in the book. So we were able to get a hold of millions and millions of online dating profiles and interactions.
Now, I want you to pay attention closely of what goes into the book. And this is not what is the whole premise of the book, but it gives you a snippet of what is expected out of the book. And normally what is expected is you're going to get some raw data and you're going to get some, I believe, testimonies and some other information, more depth information of really what goes in the psychology of someone that goes looking for a potential prospect or just looking for a quick, release when going through online dating. So let's continue. Fair use, fair use.
From one mainstream U.S. dating platform. And we were able to see not only, what all their profile information was and what if they had them, racial preferences were, but also who contacted whom, controlling for all of the other types of aspects on their profile that might also attract them besides race, and who responded to whom, right? So we have all of that data, which we analyzed for the book. And most of it we have in online tables because it's so quantitative, and we really try to summarize it and make it much more digestible with just figures in the book. And then we also conducted in-depth interviews with 77 Black, Latino, Asian, multiracial, white women and men daters, straight, gay. And this was really great to really put a face on all of the quantitative data, and to also be able to see variations from the norm. And I'll just, in a very brief generalization, there's a lot of detail in the book, but I'm going to give you a quick summary of what those findings were of how people interacted with each other. So what we found is that race is the deal breaker of all characteristics. It operates more strongly than education, physical characteristics. It is the deal breaker. And
did y'all hear that? Race is the deal breaker. Let's rewind back, shall we? Let's rewind it back. Let's hear that again.
It operates more strongly than education, physical characteristics. It is the deal breaker. All the quantitative data, and to also be able to see variations from the norm. And I'll just, in a very brief generalization, there's a lot of detail in the book, but I'm going to give you a quick summary of what those findings were of how people interacted with each other. So what we found is that race is the deal breaker of all characteristics. Brief generalization, there's a lot of aggrieved how people interacted with each other. So what we found is that race is the deal breaker of all characteristics. And I'll just, in a very brief generalization, there's a lot of detail. Brief generalization, there's a lot. I'm going to give you a quick summary of what those findings were of how people interacted with each other. So what we found is that race is the deal breaker of all characteristics. All the quantitative data, especially rate to form. And I'll just end how people interacted with each other. So what we found is that race is the deal breaker of all characteristics. It operates more strongly than education, physical characteristics. It is the deal breaker. And one of the things that we often found, which I thought was interesting in interviewing, especially many of the white men, is this sort of.
So, race is the deal breaker. So when they talk about this thing, and she about to talk about white man in a second, we'll play that. So race is a deal breaker, right? Let's go by that notion, right? The question should be asked, so why is us as Black people, men and women, particularly, if we're not seeking each other on the average on these dating apps, then who are we really searching for when we go online? Are we searching one or each other? Or we're searching other people that's outside our communities or outside our race more? And it seems to me, from what has been said and what's been put out there, it looks to me that from what is said about, and let's be honest, a lot of dudes say that most of them will look for a Black woman before they look for anything else. I gotta call cap in a way, and here's why. Because let's be honest, if you're a person that's not able to get access to Black women like that, and let's keep real, some of them, their complaints is justifiable, then who else you gonna look for in regards to companionship and looking for a quick bus? You're gonna be seeking non-Black people, especially men. You're gonna seek non-Black women, most particularly ones that are Spanish, that are white, white women, some Asian women, and other tribes of non-Black women, most likely. Same thing applies to the females. You are going to be seeking non-Black mates, mostly white first, then everybody else second, especially Black men. So you're looking for non-Black mates just to get validation. I'm just saying. But anyway, let's keep going. Fair use. And please, guys, like the stream and hit the super chat. I want to see how the super chat runs. Let's see some colors on this, chat board. Fair use.
This aggrieved feeling that they were disadvantaged in online dating, and that they were being ignored. And yet, in our quantitative analysis, we find that white men are the most desired of all men. And this has been shown in many other platforms too. So this is not specific to the platform that we're looking at. Our quantitative analysis, especially many of the white men, is this aggrieved feeling that they were disadvantaged in online dating, and that they were being ignored. And yet, in our quantitative analysis, we find that white men are the most desired of all men. Especially many of the white men, is this aggrieved feeling that they were disadvantaged in online dating, and that they were being ignored. And yet, in our quantitative analysis, we find that white men are the most desired of all men. Aggrieved feeling that they were disadvantaged in online dating, and that they were being ignored. And yet, in our quantitative analysis, we find that white men are the most desired of all men.
And for good reason. There's many reasons. As you know, with the help of propaganda And I'm calling down the middle. All right, some people that will watch, they think it's, hating, but we gotta be fair, honest. You cannot be well desired if you control the minds of heart people through subversion, propaganda, which propaganda is a very powerful tool. Images matter. Who you see as your divinity of God, which is mostly non-black. I mean, non-black mostly. You're going to flock to that. You're going to be seeking outside the race more. Hell, you're going to be looking into these people and have the notion, perception that they are almighty, all powerful, especially the man, because he is the face of what gives life. And also that desire as well, because let's be honest, when you look at a lot of magazines, most magazines that you pick up nowadays are going to pretty much be non-black people on the average. Now we have some magazines that were run by black folks, Jet magazines, and I don't know if Ebony's run all that stuff, but these magazines really don't really show who really is viewed as divine and a beauty. It's most of the people that we see on a normal basis for their own propaganda as the chosen select people, which is the man. So keep that in mind as we're going through this. Let's keep going. Fair use, fair use.
This has been shown in many other platforms too. So this is not specific to the platform that we're looking at. Our quantitative analysis showed that almost all women all women of all races and almost all gay men, actually black men did not show this, that their preference was strongest for white men. Now this preference for white men was statistically significant for other races, but especially strong for white women. But I found it really interesting that women and gay men of other races would respond first to white men and only secondly to men of their same race. So on the other hand, when it comes to preferences for women, so if we look at the ways in which straight men and lesbians, who their preferences are, who they interact with, etc., we found that unlike for men, whiteness was not the defining characteristic per se, but the defining pattern was for same race preferences, so contacting others of the same race. Men of all race and lesbians of color do not seem to have a first preference for white women, but their same ethnic group. And unlike straight women and gay men, they're also more open to people from all racial groups, and this is really important, except black daters. So we document a persistent and specific anti-black.
Okay, before we continue, and she's gonna go really more in on this. I hope this is really helpful, guys. And like always, y'all can find this particular segment on YouTube, this video. I'm doing my own analysis on this one. Make sure you leave a comment during the end of this video. I'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions on this particular segment, this stream. Also, please like the video as well. Share the video. It's going to get real intense. And this is going to be very much triggering to a lot of people. Mostly it's going to be triggering mostly women than the men. Because we already know that men do have a little ease, especially black men do have ease on these dating apps. Some of them, or a good portion of them, depending who's complaining what they can't get access to. But usually it's always, women do struggle on these dating apps. And what I mean by struggle, we're going beyond, getting Netflix and chill and, getting, some easy access to sex. That's another story. Anywho, let's continue. Fair use.
That operates among the sexual preferences of white, Asian, Hispanic, multiracial, straight men, and gay women. We have lots of theories based on our interviews for why this may be, but basically, in terms of why is it that white masculinity is so highly valued, more so than, say, white femininity, because we assumed that if given racial hierarchies and norms around hegemonic beauty, that white, more so than say white femininity, because we assumed multiracial straight men and gay women. You know, we have lots of theories based on our interviews for why this may be, but basically, in terms of why is it that white masculinity is so highly valued, more so than say white femininity, because we assumed that if given racial hierarchies and norms around, hegemonic beauty, that more so than say white femininity, because we assumed that white femininity would also be highly valued.
Hold on, guys.
But what we find in our interviews for why this may be, but
I just don't like this because it's hard to rewind back on this without it not repeating. I'm gonna rewind it back so y'all can hear that again. Maybe it's this section. Fair use, fair use.
Operates among the sexual preferences of white, Asian, Hispanic, multiracial, straight men and gay women. You know, we have lots of theories based on our interviews for why this may be, but basically, in terms of why is it that white masculinity is so highly valued, more so than say white femininity, because we assumed that if given racial hierarchies and norms around hegemonic beauty, that white femininity would also be highly valued. But what we find is that, you know, white.
Before you get answer, I'll give you answer why white masculinity is more valued than, give a sake, white femininity. Answer simple, because this is a structure or what they call patriarchy. And you know, they always talk about this, the gynocracy, the matriarchy, yada yada yada, right? That stuff, right? White masculinity is always put on the top pedestal because this is the thing that runs society. This is the main hub to how to keep, or what you see how structured society is run. Still run and dominated by men, last my check. That's why it's more looked and more favored on top of the food chain than the ladies. And it is sexist, unfortunately, but that's how the world works. There is no considered balance in regards to Eurocentric culture. They deal with imbalances. There has to be a top. There's always going to be a bottom. There's no even ground middle. Regardless of laws that's put in place to favor women, it's still an imbalanced system because the men always got to be up ahead running things. So white masculinity is always going to be more highly favored because, like I said, society wants and they see it beneficial that men run things, and it should be deemed at a high and top pedestal. Now let's see if her not real, but her actual conclusion to this and why she think and feel that way about white male masculinity and white female femininity. Fair use, fair use.
Femininity does not carry the same kind of appeal across all groups, in large part due to patriarchy and gender norms, right? So the association with white masculinity.
Boom. That answer your question. Patriarchy. I said it before. And everybody knows it's patriarchy, but she just confirms that. Fair use, fair use.
Is not just associated with sexual allure, but it also symbolizes economic and cultural power in a way that femininity generally does not, right? And, you know, in our interviews, while there is plenty of resistance to this among individuals, we also see that this sort of valorization of white masculinity is really something that's been internalized and reproduced by marginalized groups as well. So, you know, that's a sobering finding.
Right. So do you ever, I know you said you were speculating, but do you ever get to a founded why this is?
Well, I mean, I don't think people are not good at explaining themselves. They often don't know why they do what they do, right? And even if they do, it's rare that they would admit that to someone who's interviewing them, right? So we have to get at, that's why the quantitative data was so interesting to look at, because we could actually see behavioral data, but that doesn't necessarily explain the impetus, right, behind it, or the why in there. I mean, our argument, and we definitely see this indirectly from all of our interviews, particularly with white daters, but also of color. It's hard not to live in a society where you have a racial hierarchy that's infused in the fabric of your society and not live and breathe it and enact it, right? And so sociologically, people are, whether they're aware of it or not, have bought into racial hierarchies of preference and, you know, what is desirable. And one of the things that's really, I think, kind of there's so much hope for online because it could potentially be revolutionary because you are exposing people to others. And
desirable. No. Desire is manufactured. A lot of people don't tell you this. View and see each other is artificial. Someone manufactured because it puts a thought in their head. What is beautiful? What is desirable? You just don't grow out the womb think what's beautiful and desired. You have to be, how can I say this? Indoctrinated to know what's beautiful. And I know the word indoctrinate sounds very mean, but I gotta keep real with you. How people view and operate on what they see as desirable and beautiful and stuff is all learned behavior, trained behavior. Like, now, people could give me rebuttals, go in the chat in the comment section, and if you get far to this point, will tell me why I'm wrong and give some proper context. I'll read it. But how I look at desirability and what is said before, I said is always what you've been indoctrinated, what you've been trained, what forms of propaganda and version, all that. Big words that I don't like to use. So that's how I see it. But you be the judge. Fair use, fair use.
I will say that there is, for people who don't have these underlying preferences, I think it's rare, but for those who...
And one thing I could prove this, and this might be a bad example, but screw it. Marilyn Monroe. Everybody see her as the epitome of beauty and desire, right? Because they see her in movies. Hell, you see her on Playboy magazines. Yeah, say more. Fair use, fair use.
Don't. There is evidence for reaching out to people of other races. It's just not the norm, right? So we're documenting the norm because we're sociologists. We study patterns rather than the exception. But what happens is you have this commodification of people, and what many of the people that we interviewed describe as like this industrial assembly line of online dating. It starts to feel very transactional and anonymous, and it's very easy to...
Yeah, it is transactional. I'm glad you said it, Jennifer Laquis. Why I say it's transactional is because most majority humans today, especially these online dating apps and stuff, they're looking to get something for less. Because in their mind, they're not going to see you again. So they better also say, I better just make some out of this now, and at least it's worth my while. Case in point, a man wants sex. So he'll go online on a lot of these, or a few dating apps, or even go as far as social media, will want to give a nice or unknown lady a holler. And in return, she's going to either respond back. And once the respond back occurs, there will be a short, brief interaction, hopefully getting to the point or going mode one, or, and get straight to the point where what's the purpose of the interaction. And normally, most dudes on the average won't tell a woman, say, I want sex. Will you give me sex? And in return, the lady will respond and say, yes, I will give you sex. It's going to be $60 to $100 or more. And then that is what is considered transaction. I mean, I heard stupid rumors that from a lot of these dudes say that these young chicks asking these boys to cash app them some money. I mean, if you got sons and your sons turn into a trick at a young age, you have failed them. And last time I checked, most of these boys have been raised by mothers on the average. So if your son is, you give your son money and your son turn around and take the money to trick off on a young girl. I'm gonna leave that alone. Fair use, fair use.
To objectify and dehumanize others, right? And so it really normalizes this idea of racial preference. Most of the dating sites, the dating websites, and the dating apps have racial filters. Not all of them, but most of them do. And it really normalizes the idea that having a racial preference is natural, right? So we would often ask people, do you have a racial preference, and why? What does that mean? Because we find it fascinating that, the dating market is one of the only venues left in modern day US society where it's like acceptable to articulate, I like this race, I'm not attracted to, I'm going to filter this entire race out, right? I mean, in some ways, if you just take a step back and think about that, that's really, it really stands out as very different from the ways in which we think about, racial preferences and other dimensions of life, like, home lending and college admittance, et cetera. So when we asked people about their racial preferences, people were mostly white daters, but also some daters of color they were very matter of fact, but they did not see it as problematic necessarily. They often described it in this language of it's idiosyncratic, it's natural, or it's almost biological, it's random, it's uncontrollable. And, this is really the idea of it being idiosyncratic or random, that's completely contradicted by our findings, right? Because we find a systematic, patterned outcomes of racial preference that align with these historical and sociological racial hierarchies that we know historically, right? So one of the terms that we coin in the book is, we call it digital sexual racism, and I'll just kind of tell you what we mean by that. So
before she continues, make sure you guys hit the like button, share the screen. Likes are free. And support the channel, super chat, etc. Fair use.
Sexual racism is an old concept, right? It's as old as the fears that put those anti-miscegenation laws into place at the beginning of the 20th century. But that degree of sexual racism, it really interacts with very fast-moving digital technologies in new ways. So as I mentioned before, filters, right, that block out entire groups of people, from the public dating market space. I mean, just the existence alone of a standard drop-down box disciplines people into believing that racial preference is something that should be. And that is fascinating.
No, a lot of people don't believe in racial preference. Personally, I disagree. They don't believe in that. I think majority of folks in their mind that you should be only prioritizing your time, energy in the racial group you're born in. If there is sense of preference, it's always try to dictate the man or who they should prefer, and always tell them what they should be picking. And that's like a mommy type of complex that you're controlling the males, and you should not be doing that. Just like the male should not be telling you what to do. Unfortunately, you ladies won't like that. But overall, it goes back that people are trying to dictate what people do with their own sexual organs. But and the filters, it's like any algorithm. They do put filters so that way they segment who should be seen. Personally, so anyway, fair use.
That is so acceptable. Now, there have been, in the aftermath of the George Floyd killing, there was a lot of pressure put on Grindr, and they took off their racial preferences. But there's also the role of algorithm.
Yeah, I don't know why this had to come to play that they because a black man died, now they gotta say we're going to really dumb down the apps. And the apps were designed for people to have free or actual preference. It should remain that. It should not be watered down because someone died. I don't believe in that notion or really agree with that, much as, in my opinion, think that the ideal that you as a company trying to, you know, I guess regulate the racial boundaries of people to really not give people that option to really select and choose who they really want. That's just me. Anyway. Oh, I see Queen of Virtue. Welcome, Queen. How you doing? I hope you're sharing this in your timeline, your social media Queen of Virtue. It's good seeing you. Welcome. Welcome. Fair use, fair use. Hope you enjoying the stream so far, Queen.
And there's a lot of really interesting social science being done. And how is technology, in some ways, helping us get over our ails, but in other ways, is it also perpetuating our problems? And in this case, racism. And so algorithms.
It's not designed to. Racism is a man-made creation for one thing only: control. Fair use, fair use.
Even if someone is not putting their choice, or even if there's no filter option, the way algorithms work, they need to be able to filter down, give people a choice of fewer daters. Otherwise, we suffer from what social scientists call the paradox of choice, which is you're overwhelmed, too much choice. It's worse than having fewer choices in some ways.
I agree with that. That I agree. When someone's overwhelmed with so many options and choice, it can be problematic. And I mean problematic in the near future. I'm not sure Miss Williams that says she don't want to date a blue collar man is one of those examples. And she says she has done them all. And when she says she has done them all, this is what comes to mind. Hold on. Do I have that thing? I don't have it. All right, anyway. I don't get that soundbite. Anyway, let's keep going. Fair use, fair use.
And so what they do is they base it on past preferences of the user, or how that person, who they've interacted with before and who others have interacted with before. And so it builds in that racial preference and who they end up seeing, right?
Don't choose it up front. It does it for, like, automatically. It does it for you, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Yep.
these dating apps are contributing to this perpetuation of this the concept of sexual racism, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Not necessarily on purpose, but it's building in a habit, an old habit, a preference that we have come to believe or tell ourselves is no problem, right?
It puts it in there, even if it wasn't.
Yep.
Even if you are one of the rarer kinds of people who really are open to love. So say I'm just finding love and I'm open to all races, I'm attracted to all races and maybe even all genders,
Right.
If someone tells me I should narrow it down, I will start to do that, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Then all of a sudden an idea is in there that was not necessarily there before. So how do we, I guess, what's the alternative? How do dating apps take that part out of it, or how do the algorithms take that part out of it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the most important thing, the instinct is to always to say the dating platforms, you need to be better, you need to fix yourselves. And, we live in a capitalist society and that probably is what needs to happen. But I do feel very uncomfortable with the idea of assuming that these corporations have our best interest at heart. They want to make a profit, and people do have racial preferences. And if they don't give people what they want, that they're not going to make as much money, right? And so,
But that's the premise, and that is the art of doing business. You must give your consumers what they want. That's why they're there. They're not there just for you to look pretty. They're there for you to provide a service. And the dating apps is a service they provide to say, we will give you the many potential mates / options on our platform for you to potentially consume and purchase. That is their business model. And it's a very ingenious business model. You think about it. Because now when you say and you create a platform where people have the option to pick whoever across the globe, not just America, but mostly outside America, last I checked, that desires, fat, small, skinny, or all that, it's in your fingertips. You know. So, and even including with the women, you could pick a man that's muscular, cute, tall, and depending if they give what he does, even better. And as you can see the chat, see right there? Yes. There we go. Yeah, please support the channel, guys. All right, let's continue. Fair use, fair use.
There is that. So for what we really argue in the book is, the first step is to understand what's happening, right? To acknowledge that these algorithms exist, that these filters might be problematic, at least to think about them, to think through them, to like think critically about why we make the decisions we do, and to acknowledge that the personal is political, right? There are political implications to racialized sexual desire. Now, I would never argue that the government should regulate people's sexual preferences, right? That would be, like going back to anti-miscegenation law, but in the opposite direction.
The government does have to do that. People are free to do what they want. And most people that are majority of this country, they select and choose to still interact and procreate in their group. So I'm not sure why people, especially Black people, think that they're coming out here seeking and wanting non-Black mates, and they're going to be the first choice. No, you're always going to be the last choice when it comes to dating, mating, and procreating on the average. Fair use. Hold on, guys. Something happened. Let me keep going. Fair use, fair use.
But I do think that it's really important for people just to be aware of this and to think about it. But I do think that dating platforms can also, despite the fact that they rely on profit and surveillance capitalism, et cetera, I do think that they can be much more transparent about educating consumers about what their algorithms are. Yeah. So algorithms are usually black boxes. We have no idea what's driving them. We don't know what variables go into them. So they can make them much more transparent. And, the algorithms, especially the ones that use race, are pretty unimaginative. There's this, what dating companies are trying to sell is sort of this magic, we can set you up with your perfect significant other, the magic match. The truth of the matter is, though, is that people don't actually know what they want, as I said earlier. And so this idea of assuming that my preferences for someone who's like me will result in a perfect match, that is simply not true. And so we've done analyses of, we have a way of measuring sort of attitudes and belief systems. And when we look at the role of race, we find that race has very little to do with how well people match in terms of their belief systems, right? But people often think that race is a huge part and cultural part of how people look at things. But there have been some really interesting studies of looking at people's preferences in their romantic partner and then seeing if that's true, if that's who they actually do click with. There was a study done. It was a big, like a speed dating, face-to-face situation. And they had people list all their preferences before they started. And then they went around and met, almost 100 people. And then at the very end, the people that people were most attracted to and had, really clicked with often had varying on what they wanted their preferences to be, or what they thought they wanted. So I would argue that yes, it's important to give people less of a choice in who they see, because otherwise dating apps are completely overwhelming. But it can be random, or at least allow people to, check a box to reset the algorithm, to be able to, have more control over that. So in any case, I think that there's a lot that can be done. And I also think that companies can do a lot more about just educating people. I mean, OkCupid actually did a great job.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, isn't it? Queen of Virtue is very interesting. I know. It's very interesting. Too bad, much people that's watching, they watch from the clouds. And like I said, I know y'all guys watching. Please, the chat room is open. If y'all have any agreement, disagreement, or what you feel is inaccurate, please express yourself. This will go much further. I don't mind doing a breakdown for myself, but for those that's watching this, y'all watching, I mean, y'all participation will go along much further and smoother, personally. The algorithms or these dating apps are not designed to teach you how to use their apps. And the reason why they're not in the business to teach you is because the end game is to make you stay on the platform. Yes, I said it. Do Facebook teach you how to use Facebook? Does IG teach you how to use IG? Does Snapchat teach you how to use Snapchat? Yes or no? Is anybody present? Can you hear me? Do they teach you? No. So why do you expect dating apps to teach you how to use their platform? And the whole premise is to make a profit. Profit is usually they'll give you a subscription, so you're able to get badges, stars, or even go as far as to get actual random picks that you get first dibs. It's solely dependent on you to sit there and click and look and be on the platform. The longer you're on the platform, the greater chance you give them a greater return in profit, rather in your eyeballs or what you purchase on a lot of these dating apps. That's how they function. That's how they work. I Love Cupid probably is one of those sincere and probably commendable, respectful platforms that will tell you how to use their platform. But overall, most apps today are not in the business of teaching you how to use their platform. And if they are teaching you how to use the platform, they're miseducating you. Because if they taught you how the platform really works, how it really makes money on stuff, you as a consumer will probably think twice using their platform. And that's something that they don't want to talk about. Anyway, let's keep going. Fair use, fair use. And I will probably drop the link in the next couple minutes because I'm in the halfway mark of this. So let's continue. Fair use, fair use.
With this, where they would actually, they had a blog. They're now owned by Match, but back when they were their own entity, they had a blog where, they were very upfront about, wow, this is messed up. This is what you all are doing, daters. This is what you're doing. You're ignoring women who are, overweight. You are, all you 40-year-old men, you're only contacting women who are 30 and younger. They would out people, and they talked a lot about race too.
Well, I have to say, in regards to the segregation and the yeah, I know people start dumping out after hearing about that, but let's be honest, it's true. There are people that are going to discriminate. Yeah, they're going to discriminate. And it goes back to preference. That some men that's on these dating apps, they're not so thrilled to find and pick women that are considered overweight or even go as far as morbidly obese. Same thing if a lady said, I don't want to deal with someone that's too old or looks too old, which is fair. But it goes both ways when the men are selecting. If a woman, if she does look good enough, they will holler at her and maybe give her a quick smash, but most likely they'll keep it going, especially if the woman is considered too old. roughly in her mid-30s or over 30s. And let's be honest, if she keep her body in good shape, most likely. But in America, it's kind of hard for a lot of Americans to keep in shape, especially ladies, because that takes discipline. Anyway, let's keep going. Fair use.
And consumers loved it, actually. People loved reading that stuff. So I don't think it drove people away from the platform. Yeah. So yeah, I think that we can, if we're stuck with corporate entities in charge of allowing us to have a sexual marketplace rather than other options, then I think that those are some of the things that can be done. But I also think that we could think really creatively about what's a better online still, because I think that has a lot of potential for bringing people together. But how can it be like a nonprofit kind of dating marketplace, right? That's not going to be driven by the surveillance capitalism and profit, et cetera. So there's a lot of really interesting questions. I don't have the answers for them, but lots of research for lots of different people.
Right. And it just, I do.
Go on. All right. Let me keep going. Hold on. Let me see if I'm all right. I think I'm on the halfway mark. I'm probably going to drop the call link. I doubt anybody's going to come up personally.
A sense of.
I doubt it, but who knows? Somebody might be watching, lurking, because you're not interacting enough in the chat room. So maybe I want to voice your opinion more onto this. So as I run it, I'll drop the call link for those that want to come up.
That it kind of comes back to making $1, which is unfortunate, because someone like myself, like you're enlightening me to a whole bunch of things that I didn't know. And, someone like myself would be taken by that situation and not really think twice about it, because I don't know to think twice about it, and it's my fault. I should do my own kind of research and think more creatively, or think more about what I'm doing. But more often than not, I do feel that people as a general, just they have the idea and pursue the idea. So if I want to meet someone, I'm going online, I'm thinking about what's controlling my choices, or what choices I'm actually in control of myself, and so I don't know. I agree with you. I think there's transparency is the word, to tell people, hey, just so you know, you're going into this thinking this thing, but a whole bunch of other things are going to happen to you along the way that might change that for you, and you don't even know it's changing for you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Way to gain that information, if there's some way for these apps to give us all the info, that would be something. And like you said, I do think it's about making that $1, which is unfortunate for the people spending that $1, but not unfortunate for the companies making it, because that is such an easy thing to make money off of. Love.
Yes, exactly.
No, they make money off your desires, your ignorance. That's what makes money. They're not really concerned about love. I think love, it really is, if we want to go by that, is really subjective, and truly, the more you're seeking and look for some, they are fulfilling a problem, or giving you a solution more than a problem. If people didn't know that you're a person that, if your whole desire is looking for a mate, looking for companionship, or looking for a quick, sex, the dating apps is the place to be. But in regards to look for anything else, you might have to search elsewhere, because majority of all dating apps today is more of a quick fix. A lot of people got too much on their mind, on their plate, to know they could sit there on certain apps and swipe left, swipe right, swipe left, swipe right, and eventually pick a select, and maybe meet that person, get a nice little thrill, and then go back the next day on the same apps. It's not really addressing the real problem. And if we want to be honest, if there was real crucial data, and I think this book really fulfills it more, What's the average of people that's 5 people online getting married within no greater than 2 years? If there's a real answer to this, to my question, I'll be happy for someone to share that. But until then, I would say not many people get married like that, going through dating apps. Let's keep going. Fair use, fair use.
Dating, that's I don't want to say it that way, but it's alluring to people. I want to say it's kind of like the cosmetic industry. Wear this shade of lipstick and you'll, everything will be there, I fall into that all the time. I'm like, you're right, I need that lipstick. I need similar concept of something, I don't know, I'm losing my words, but imagination or dreamlike that we want to aspire to. We want to attain that and just do it however we can do it. We don't actually necessarily think about what all these different steps.
We think of them as just our individual, what consequences can there be, right? So it's putting a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of the individual to think about, but I also think that society, wide, we need to think about education and to a certain extent, in the last, especially with the Black Lives Movement, I think that people are being re-educated in a way they haven't been since the civil rights era. So I think there's certainly hope, and I do think that online dating has so much potential, right? It's interesting, like outside of race, just thinking generally about how people use the medium, it's just fascinating. Like you mentioned, people think about it like, how can I feel good about myself, et cetera. And there are so many people that we interviewed who often, they'd be just going through a down period, or they would have just broken up with someone, and they might have no intention of actually meeting that person, but they'll go online for a while to get their self-esteem up, right? I mean, it plays so many different roles beyond just a sexual and dating marketplace that I find absolutely fascinating, and many people are researching this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So it makes me wonder, answers get offline completely and go back to meet. I mean, right now it's a little, where we are in the world, but go back to meeting people face to face and talking and engaging.
Right.
That's what, there you go. What's her name? Let me find her name. Miss Concrete Rose. That's what you should be doing. You must be out in the world instead of just sitting back on the computer screen. That will help. That will go along. That'll be very grateful. But like I said, many people nowadays, the online thing is comfortability. It's too comfortable, in my opinion. And I see somebody in the back room. I will bring you up in a second. I'm gonna run like a few more minutes. Stay tight. Please, guys, like the stream, share the stream, and please, like always, hit the super chat or the Cash App. But always, I like to see the colors of the super chat. It will bless my heart much more. But let's continue. Fair use. Fair use.
What about you is interesting. Maybe I'll find something I didn't know I would like about you. You know what I mean? Like, let's just scrap the whole idea, guys. Fresh or something. Even though I know the world, we're going to keep advancing, especially in technology. And there's going to be, soon there's going to be holograms. You're going to go on a date and the person's going to be there, but not really that.
Much safer.
Exactly. But, I wonder what we can do as individuals or as a society together to kind of advance that, to change that. And I don't think it is only on the responsibility of the app makers or online dating specialists. It is on the individual. And I agree with you. I do think it comes down to education. But I find more often than not, I can't get the right info. Some company, something is preventing me from finding out what is it.
Right.
How can I change it? How can I reset it, as you said earlier?
Right.
So like there's a built-in system to just keep it going. And in addition, then we're perpetuating all this negative stuff as well. So I get to you, but I'm not expecting you to have the one answer. But what can we do? What can we actively do to sort of begin the change of this?
Well, like I think there are.
Sorry about that. Before she go to solutions, all right, Kev, you there? I'm gonna bring up one person.
Yes.
All right, good. I don't. What's good? What's good? How much of this have you been listening to the tape to give your two comments?
I actually just got on, bro. It's like you and like two other brothers that are like, be running.
All right, you mention other categories. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I'm just getting in, but I definitely heard about the book and like the conclusions that they made from online dating, and it's just one of those things where, and I just wanted to just stop in for a few minutes because I'm a little bit low on time, but it's one of those things where it's like, it's hilarious because, especially when it comes about like the online dating preferences, it's like how they put it on the book. It's like, despite all the narrative that, like, we're all just just chasing after white women left and right, it turns out that these women complain about that are actually projecting. They're the ones chasing after white men that don't want them, and then they want to turn around and try to accuse us of doing the same thing in the opposite direction. It's just like, no, it's just but I definitely gotta make time to read the book when I get the chance to, and it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, listen, you know what I'm saying? I'm just gonna sit back and wonder. I'm like, how are they gonna try to lie? I wonder how they're gonna find a way to misconstrue the information into a lie going forward, especially since Oprah admitted that the whole Deadbeat Dad narrative for the most part is a lie. So, I mean, hey, it is what it is.
One thing I will say, during the broadcast, I'm a little bit neutral in regards to black men, black women in these dating apps overall. Personally, you got to catch the replay on my take on it, but I will say this: that personally, we all know, because we live in a more dominant society that's roughly 80% non-black, while we're just like the 13 percent that we are, that it makes sense most people still want to seek their own people overall. But the times have shifted a little bit for the last maybe more than 10 years. And we could say even go as far as 15 years, in regards to us and them and what we really want and what we're choosing, And let's be honest, Kev, most dating apps today, or as long as that people have been using more for the last decade, from Miss Jennifer Quist said, that we just, it's like more of a Netflix type chill type thing with a lot of people going online dating. You get me? There's a sense of transaction that I need to get some now, and if I don't get it, next. How I prove it? The swiping method. Swipe right, swipe left, swipe right, swipe left. There's a winner. And there are too many options for a lot of people that use these apps, and they're not really being really true intention of what really outcomes you're seeking. So, and in regards with the ladies, since you mentioned them, yeah, some ladies now are looking for mostly non-black mates because let's be honest, they have the notion that these non-black mates are their ticket meal to get out of this oppression. And we all know from our own eyes, and we could say data, that no group is going to get you out of oppression, especially these other groups of males. And if you do get one of them, best believe, they're going to have their own mates aside, and you're going to play, the concubine role, like we always hear this, So, but let me keep playing the tape. And unless you want to say something, go ahead. Say something, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna say this before I hop off here, man. Thank you for having me up. Listen.
Yes, second.
It's just the point where it's like, hey, listen, if these women want to have sex for superficial reasons, that is okay. I am 100% in favor of that. But I'm being is like this. Just like how a pro athlete understands the risk of him getting hurt, despite the fact that he can make a lot of money from playing pro sport, these women have to understand too. Hey, if you run the streets, hey, even though it can be rewarding, monetarily rewarding, or sexually rewarding, hey, you're at a higher risk of getting hurt physically, emotionally, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anything bad to happen to you, but you got to understand, like, you got to accept the risk that comes with it. So I'm just against, what I'm against is them trying to defer the blame or defer the risk of being out there in the street exclusively on men, especially on so-called black men. Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm against. Like, I'm not gonna have anything hostile to say about a woman who basically 10 toes to the floor, for the streets, and she understands what she's getting into, and she understands the risk, and she takes the necessary precautions, and you know what I mean, that type of stuff. Like, I got no problem with women like that. They can actually be quite useful because they provide a useful service. But
Okay.
this whole I'm gonna run the streets and then blame the men for it, especially blame the brothers for it afterwards. I'm like, nah, that's what I'm against. So
And it's good for you mention that, because I noticed there were some videos out about one particular woman that still puts her shortcomings in life, and she's almost pushing 30, black men, and her real intention is to find a non-black man just to have a non-black baby, and she has psychological issues. I'm saying, okay, let's say that's real, and she's putting this as a real front of that's what she is. You're in no position as a woman to bring any person in this world, and you going through some real crap, mentally, physically, and spiritually. What essence or what you gonna produce out of this union that brings forth fruit, life? But most we can have these conversations because people say that if that is one's desire, she should fulfill her desire. Not every desire should be fulfilled, because you create the problems that you create the you create the even the better. I'm sorry, let me say it. You create the problems you complain about. In better words, hope that makes sense.
oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like you said, again, like you said, if you're gonna be and I think Mr. Z, shout out to Mr. Z, he had an excellent live. He basically made the point. I'm like, hey, listen, if you wanna go chase after them, I'm like, hey, I'm all for it. Just like what Everett Anderson said, go ahead, do that. But whatever consequences come of it, you got to eat that. You got to eat that. Ain't gonna be no coming, like, screw all that whole like how can I put this? What I'm against is this whole Captain Save-A-Ho narrative of, oh, we have to take these quote unquote wayward women and we have to focus all our resources on trying to air quotes correct them instead of just simply finding women that are already willing to be cooperative. I think that's the narrative that we need to shut down immediately. Like, no, if you want to be out there in the streets, if you want to be out there chasing after, other groups of men, that is okay. I endorse you. More power to you. But stop trying to play the victim. If you lose that game, stop trying to play the victim. Like, you're not a victim, you're a loser. I mean,
Okay.
hey, guys lose all the time, and we just have to just shut the fuck up and eat it. So, okay. But anyways, Chaos, I gotta hop off, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you. All right, let's continue this. Fair use.
There are comparisons that can be made to social media generally, right? So one of the issues with social media that we've seen, especially over this past year, is it has become the public market, the public space, which is good. You have more people, in some ways very democratic, more people able to voice, etc. On the other hand, because they're on private platforms, what we've discovered and hadn't expected is that the highest trafficked posts and those that go viral are the ones that are often the most ugly or misinformation. So misinformation actually spreads much faster than true information, in part because there's something so alluring to human beings about something controversial or anger, etc. And that wouldn't happen necessarily if there wasn't profit that was generating those patterns, right? And so to me, and there are many computational social scientists and others who are looking at this and trying to figure out is there a way that we can regulate social media and the internet so that there's at least some control over this? Or better yet, is there a way that we can create these spaces that are similar for social media, for dating, for all of the things we want to do in the public square that we once did face-to-face, and we still want to do the face-to-face stuff too. Is there a way that we can design that as people, right? As you know, it doesn't have to be a company that owns it, that is proprietary. It can be, you know, a nonprofit organization or a neighborhood organization, or et cetera. Like, I think that there are ways that we will figure out in the future to make this much more grassroots. But it's, you know, the internet is the Wild West, and it's just like companies have a lot.
Yes, that's the beautiful thing about. That's why you hear stories and articles right now speak how they're going to regulate the internet and all this nonsense, right? From Section 235, I believe. I think the name of the section. How certain people are trying to sue certain media outlets for putting out false information, propaganda. But to no avail, that's not going to work, because majority of all your telecommunication outlets are protected in good faith, because if they're not protected, a lot of your media exists. So obviously, the Wild West with the internet is going to continue to play, because let's be honest, people want to make money. You want to make money. You can't afford to be not the Wild West, because it is what you do as a person, as a media outlet, will be over. I'm just saying. Fair use.
Are able to figure out how to make it work best for them, and we're just sort of, there's so much about it that is beguiling that it's difficult to question all the negative, right? So yeah, some really, really interesting questions in there.
Yeah. And viewers, you know, take part, take a stand, change it up. I don't know. There are many creators and inventors out there. Invent something new. Invent a way.
Yes.
To stop. Invent a way for a new train of thought to you know, take flight, so to speak.
Right.
Please,
yeah,
all of us, you know, for yourself too.
So yeah, you know, take the good from this online dating platform, and there's a lots of good there too.
There is.
So take the good, leave the bad, keep innovating, you know, to make it a healthier space.
Right. And that goes, I mean, that's a very general statement for society as it is.
It is.
Especially, you know, considering, you know, we were talking about dating, which, you know, as you said, became more friendly, so to speak, in the 50s, right? It became more courting, and it was about finding love and marriage and having children and kind of
Well, actually, since y'all mentioned 50s, there was still some form of shotgun marriage. And let's be honest, most of that date, if we want to really have that conversation, and I don't know if I can quantify this, but I'm going to say it. Dating really only existed when you're teenagers. But as you're approaching and leaving high school, you got married. Now, there's some people that might have got married while they're in college, but most likely your normal newlywed couples got married over the age of 18, up to the 50s. And as decades passed, it started to slowly but surely, depending on the racial background, it started to decline in regards to first time marriage. So that's a little insight. Fair use.
old antiquated version of the family unit. So nowadays we don't abide by that anymore. So why would we abide by all these other antiquated rules?
Right.
So very, very interesting. Please tell our friends where they can get your book.
Let's see. Well, they can go on Amazon. And buy it from Amazon, or they can buy it directly from the University of California Press webpage.
All right, guys. They're just gonna go into where you get the book, and always, you know where to get the book. I think it's a must-read book, a must-get book. If you're a person that likes to read or like do research or like just know a little more, I mean, I would highly recommend you buy that book. personally, that's some good information, and that's something that every person, especially us folks, should be reading to get more clear context and a sense of what really is expected if you're going through the dating apps, and have a real key sense of where we stand. There's too much information, and there is too much data that's been researched about interracial, in regards to dating apps. So y'all be the judge. Overall, I'm here just to give my own critique and opinions on it. And, I'm not really an advocate of interracialism personally, but let's be honest, most people are going to be doing what the hell they're going to do anyway, and a lot of them want to mix, especially black folks, men, and a lot of the women now, unfortunately. So hope you got some out of this, guys. And like always, please, the links to follow Chaos Reign Show. You can follow me on Twitter at Chaos Reign 7. You could add me as a friend on Facebook, Eric Reign on Facebook. You could join my Rumble page. Let me find the Rumble page for you. For those that don't know what it is, where is this? This is my Rumble. And let me do this. That's my Rumble. Oh, hold on. Sorry, guys. Where did it? This is my Rumble page. Is at Rumble. Is C Reign 23 on Rumble. The link's in there, and it's also in the description of this channel as well. Also join the Discord service of the Chaos Reign Show. That link is also in the description of this channel. And I've also podcast, Spotify, Anchor, etc. I have a new video up there. Let me see how the video is doing right now, since I'm talking to y'all. Oh, wait, hold on. 1 second, guys. I'm getting it. Matter of fact, I could look over here. To give you a synapse of how the video, or actually the oh, damn it. 1 second. Why? Okay. There's a new video on the Anchor podcast, Spotify. Check it out. It's also on my YouTube channel as well. Check that out. And last but not least, what else I'm missing? That said, join my Discord service. Please join Discord. It's in the about as well, and in the description of this video. And these are all the links to follow me. And please leave a comment at the end of this video. I'll be looking forward to reading to it. Also, leave a like on your way in and on your way out of this video. And like always, contribute or donate to the channel. The donation tabs also on the video as well. And that's pretty much it. Thank y'all for listening or watching today's broadcast. Until next time, let it get us rain.